Well, let's discuss this now. Truth in Energy civil engineer Hügo Krüger, meanwhile, says the main root cause for the low energy availability factor is the dysfunctional management system of Eskom, which he says is characterized by inefficient processes, especially in procurement, a lack of authority and an opaque decision-making structure. Let's speak to Hügo now, who joins us from Paris, that's in France. Hügo, good evening to you and thank you for your time. I believe you have read the majority of the VGB report by the German engineers. What stands out for you before we get into the nitty-gritties about that report?
Hi, Zoli. So this report is nothing new to many of us who've been following the energy debate closely and who are engaged working in the supply chain. In fact, I know of other people who've written similar things, maybe in shorter format to the government, to Eskom before, such as Professor Tony Lange at Wits wrote a report a few years ago. Sir Mick Davis in 2019, I believe, just before Andre Reiter became Eskom CEO, wrote something similar, and they all point to more or less the same issues. Eskom's problem is not really an engineering problem. The lack of engineering is a symptom of the dysfunctional management system, as you just read over there. Yeah. What this report highlights is that system as a root cause of load shedding. But in my view, it doesn't go to the root cause of that, if you will. Why is the management system so dysfunctional and opaque is the word that they use, and why is it that there's an issue with procurement? And my view is that all the arrows point upwards from Eskom, not downwards. In other words, it is the three ministers in charge. We should only have one, for example. You have one minister setting the board, one making policy, and then we have the Minister of Electricity, who just spoke very eloquently, making executive decisions. That is not a function of a minister. And when you have that level of executive overreach and political interference in the utility, we should not be surprised that it is dysfunctional at the bottom. That is, in my view, the root cause of load shedding.
Yeah. Well, let's then get into some of what is worrying from that VGB report. And they are suggesting that urgent maintenance at water treatment plants that they believe are shared by Medupi and Matimba power station. If that urgent maintenance is not carried out, there might be, and I quote now, catastrophic failure. Eskom has come out, though, to say there are inaccuracies here because, first of all, the water treatment plants that they mention, Medupi does not share a water treatment plant with Matimba. Who should we believe between those that are running Eskom and these engineers who have spent several months here compiling the problems at Eskom?
So if the engineers get maybe one small fact like that wrong, that maybe they have separate water treatment plants, it does not dismiss all the other findings of the report, in my view. Yeah, that is true. They share the water treatment plants, and now to say because of that one thing the entire report is discredited, maybe the German engineers just didn't know that at the time. But if that water treatment plant, that either plant is dysfunctional, as they say, and we have good information to suggest it is, then it means that you're going to have boiler tube failures, which you're not supposed to have. And we've had an issue of boiler tube failures some time ago. Why? Because if you have mud or dirty things running into the water, for example, it will corrode or erode the pipes, the boiler tubes. So I'm sorry to say, but that seems to be a bit of a spin on Eskom's behalf. These are symptoms of maintenance that have been deferred for years. Okay, there's no way around it. These are symptoms of operators not being competent, because competent operators, I mean, you've seen the photos in the report, do not leave a plant like that. They clean up after themselves at the bare minimum. They do not allow for the pipes and the steam and the thing to come out of the valves, which the report cites. So, I mean, there are so many systemic issues that was highlighted in this report. And I want to say again, it's not the first time the government has heard this.
You invoke maintenance, and we know now about planned maintenance as a nation. That means that Eskom, during a certain period, they will carry out planned maintenance. This is different from plants simply collapsing, which is unplanned. So this is planned in order to ensure that these plants are sort of brought back into working condition that will sustain for the foreseeable future. Do you believe that Eskom has genuinely spent sufficient time on planned maintenance, as the minister told us that this was carried out in the months of December, January, February?
It's impossible because if you really want to do proper maintenance, and first just to, the word maintenance is thrown around a lot. I can switch a plant on and off and call that maintenance. Okay? I can change a few things and call it maintenance. And I do believe Eskom has done some of those things to target what we call partial load losses, so small things that are wrong and broken, which you can do when the plant does its routine maintenance. But the actual maintenance that needs to be done, and I said this before the report came out on this show, was another interviewer, is that in order to do it, you need to take a unit off load. You need to impose load shedding. And the report actually says that as well. You need to impose a permanent stage 1 and 2 and do a proper overhaul. But what government has not said until now is you need to impose load shedding if you actually want to fix it. Right? And they don't want that because it's an election year. But there is a way around them which they don't want to mention as well. Eskom has a series of abandoned power stations. This report almost touched on it. It mentioned the Duval 3 one, which was broken due to corruption with insurance fraud years ago. And government has never fixed that unit. Okay, so there you have a unit that is off-load, that is bothering nobody, it's not been working for years, that you could have spent money 5 years ago to actually fix. We have abandoned power stations around the municipalities, like the one the DA is going to switch on in Rooiwal, Pretoria, which is in a better state than most of Eskom's coal plants. Why aren't we switching them on to recover our safety margin so we have flattened the system so you can take the other units offline? And I've been asking this question on so many channels and I just get silence from government. So that to me is another elephant in the room that this report almost touched on. But if you want to do maintenance, just to answer your question again, you need to take a unit off load, do a proper overhaul, and then bring it back on load. And we have not seen that in my view.
At the start of our conversation, and I'd like to end it on this very note, when you started, you said the root cause of problems at Eskom is the lack of engineering. We now have a CEO who has officially started the work of being CEO, Den Marokane. This is the man that the Minister of Electricity says today is going to have to produce a comprehensive outline of a revised generation recovery plan. Can we trust in Den Marokane to basically end load shedding?
Well, just to correct you, the root cause is political. The engineering is a symptom. But to answer your question, Mr. Marokane is a competent engineer. He's got all the right qualifications in the world. The question is, will the political economy, those three ministers, provide him with the necessary support for him to do his job? And will the politicians not prevent him from taking units offline, as we spoke, to fix the entire coal fleet? Or will they intervene like they did during the Soccer World Cup when there was supposed to be maintenance and they deferred it, okay, in order to save an event or political feature of the day? That is the question that needs to be asked. Eskom is a symptom of what is the political problem. That's the way we need to look at it. But Mr. Marokane is a competent man, and so has many of the other Eskom CEOs been in the past. But they keep on rotating every year. And the reason they rotate is because the politicians actively made it difficult, and the unions and everyone, for him to do his job, whoever was the CEO at the time. And that is what we need to fight for, is to say we can't accept this anymore. We need one minister, not three, for example. Whether it's Mr. Mantashe or Minister Ramaphosa or Minister Gordhan, I don't care. But you need one minister. So there's a direct line of communication, and he needs to give all the support. Because remember, Eskom is bankrupt. It's funded from Treasury. And that is what is the missing piece in this conversation, is to look at the politicians and say to them, you messed up firstly, and then we can fix Eskom, with obviously people like Mr. Marokane.
Yep, that was Truth in Energy civil engineer, Hügo Krüger. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zoli.
Yeah, very interesting indeed.